So, welcome. My name is Darek Puchalak. I'm the trainer and consultant in OSEC. I'm going to tell you a few things about Ansible. It's going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to teach you the basics. I will try to actually show you how I'm using it and what I think it's one of the greatest things that happens to the IT in the last decade. I know how it sounds. But really, I think there are three things that are great that happens in IT in the last decade that are great. The first one is virtualization. I don't care which one. Oh. The second one is OpenSSH that I will show you in a moment, just briefly, just to show you what is possible. And the third one is Ansible. But let's go to the basics. And the basics actually are, well, okay, I have something like 2 decades of experience as a system administrator, mostly Linux and Unix one. Something like 9, almost 10 years of being a trainer. I'm for about 2 years in OSEC, or a little bit more than 2. 3 years, okay, my memory is bad. It happens, you know. Probably I drink too much cola. Okay, so maybe that's why I want to not remember it, that it's so much. Okay, as you probably know, OSEC is on that market since 2009. We deal mostly with open source. So whenever you need something like training, subscriptions, consultation, whatever, you can come to us and ask. If it is technical, you can ask me. If it is not technical, you can ask her, for example, or anyone else. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to help you in non-technical subjects because I'm not even trying to understand things like subscriptions. It's not funny from my point of view. Okay, anyway, what is Ansible? Why I said it's one of the 3 greatest things that happens to the IT. I work as a system administrator. Sometimes part-time, it was sometimes full-time. And the biggest problem for me is actually to remember what actually, in the details, I was doing something like, let's say, 3 weeks ago. If someone asks me, what were you doing 3 weeks ago, it will be something, let me try to remember it. And if someone tells me, okay, please configure that system like the previous one, oh my goodness, when I did it. Oh, it was half a year ago. My answer is, you're kidding me. I don't remember what I was doing half a year ago. So from my point of view, Ansible is something that helps me to make sure that it all not only looks the same, that it all behaves the same. Because if I create this so-called playbook, I can actually run it. And when I run it, I can run the same playbook half a year later, 1 year later, 2 years later. And at the end, I will get something that's really important, repeatability. If I make some mistake, I fuck it up. It happens, we are just humans. I can rerun the fixed playbook 3 weeks later and fix it up. So that's something that I decided that, okay, it's really great because if you have lots of systems, and especially if you are logging there just to help someone from time to time, you notice that they are configured completely differently. And Ansible is a tool that we can use to configure our system however we like it. What is really cool in Ansible is that actually what we care is the end result. I'm not going to use the word recipe, but actually we are specifying how it should be achieved. We run it, and we don't have to worry that we will run it one times tomorrow, however you call it in English. Like with some shell scripts. It's great, but run it just once. If you run it twice, then you have a problem. No. In here, we don't have that problem. Unless we make to have that problem, and it's our fault. Anyway, what is cool about Ansible is, from my point of view, is that, yeah, I wasn't expecting to deliver it in English. So in my point of view, it's something that its requirements are not huge. It's very, very small, actually. Python, Right now, version 2 is supported, but I haven't tested it. But few modules, at least few modules, are being rewritten with Python 3. So if you have a very modern Linux distro that only has Python 3, well, go ahead. Then it is using SSH, which means it is using the same communication channel. It is using the same thing that we use to connect into our system and do something. This is another great thing. I will elaborate it in a moment. And no agents. So, okay, what it means. If you are a small shop, you don't care about it. Okay? But if you have to do something useful in a bigger environment, you are going into some company, and you are going to say, oh, this is a great product, you just have to install that agent, make some rules in the firewalls, maybe create some triple nuts, then the only thing that you can do is after you say it, well, take a look at your watch. If you have a smartwatch, you can actually put in the calendar, let's check in half a year if they made it, so that we can continue. Why? If you go to any network guy and says, you know what, I install an agent, it will connect to my management workstation or whatever, and you just have to make sure that it will be able to connect it. Just make me triple nut or whatever, the first thing you will hear, no way. No fine way. Okay? Anyway, they will tell you, no, it is not possible. If you go to your management and says, okay, we just need to install some piece of software, what they are going to tell you? Well, okay, we can do it, but we have to test it first. We have to, and you know, lots of rules. Anyway, it may happen that no one except you is really interested in doing it, because it is helping just you. From their point of view, it means, okay, they will have more work. They will have to write some procedures, whatever. Oh my goodness. In our case with Ansible, we don't have to worry about it. We just use it. And that is something that is really great. But we are using another piece of technology that I said is really brilliant. OpenSSH. Who is using SSH? You are using, oh, almost all of you are using it. Okay, who is using OpenSSH? Cool. I like you guys. And girls, of course. Why I think it is great? I'm crazy about OpenSSH because actually, when I was working in the outsourcing company, the OpenSSH was a piece of technology that saves my ass lots of times. We're going to the client for one day. We were supposed to do something useful, but what happens as usual? No rules on the firewalls, and we have a problem. Yeah, SSH was supposed to be working because it's the only way to get into the machine, but all other stuff might not. So I learned how to use OpenSSH to make the network transparent. I'm not going to dive too much into the details, but I will show you something in a moment, and I will ask you what actually it's doing, okay? So we have a very, very strong communication mechanism, OpenSSH. It is the same one that you are using. So it means it's already enabled. It has to work. No one has to change anything. It's highly secure. That's really great. As I said, no agent. You don't have to install anything on the remote side just to make it work. And another thing, if you compare it with Puppet, you can use Ansible once when you deploy the machines. You can use it just once when you configure the machines and then forget about Ansible if you want. Or you can use it every day. It doesn't matter. With things like Puppet, by default, if you do a quick manual change, it will be reverted. Not here. So, we have the OpenSSH and, well, okay, how to authenticate? Password, I don't like it. Hostbase, oh my goodness. Public key, that's a great one. Keyboard interactive. How can we use it? Why we want to use keyboard interactive? What can it mean? Anyone? Are you using two-factor authentications, maybe? Yeah, one-time password, for example. Great. Very good, very good. So actually, if you want, well, you can use it. You can use PAM modules if you want, and there you can configure everything or even specify. Use keyboard interactive with a PAM module. There are other things like two-part authentication. For example, public key and what can we use as a second authentication method? One-time password. Or public key and the password. Or in some strange places I saw two public keys. Why not? We can actually do it. Red Hat was one of the first company that released their distro with those patches. So you can actually configure, okay, you can authenticate, but you need to use two methods, not just one. Well, that's just the beginning. Come on. Am I too far? No, that's good. So if you have more than one machine, what can be useful? Well, you can specify the patterns. The patterns, and in there you can specify, okay, for every host with a domain name somewhere, Puchalak, then use those options. And those options can be things like, okay, identity is only specified in that file. So only use that key, that private key. Preferred authentication method, public key, then a password. Or you can just specify only use public key. Why not? You might decide not to use it. Where would you put it? That's the first question for you. .ssh config, yes, exactly. That's our client configuration. That's something that I use a lot. And, well, I have to admit, on one of my presentations a couple of years ago, I was checking how many options we have in OpenSSH client. If I remember correctly, it was something like 42. And much more things that we can specify in the config file. And believe it or not, I don't remember those parameters that you can specify on the command line. I don't even try to memorize it. All my knowledge is in .ssh config. So we have patterns for hosts. Well, we have the same patterns. Oh, sorry, I forgot to show you one. Please look in here. Every host that matches that pattern, okay, that's an OpenSSH. Now, the same thing we can specify for hosts that we manage with Ansible. This one is something very easy. A regular expression or a range. But if you will have more machines, it can be extremely useful to actually specify things like this. If you would have to manage, let's say, 200 machines, they probably won't have names like, I don't know, flowers, whatever. They will have names like something number. You can specify it just as a one line. That's really, really cool. So we can actually use those two mechanisms to our advantage. What else can we do? Well, if you have to jump through some other host to log in, what can you do? Who is using proxy command? You are using. Okay, what it does? Do we have another mic? Yep. So it actually is using a second host as a jump host. It executes a command there. In that case, it's netcat that actually allow us to jump through another host. Why it is useful? Well, more than 10 years ago, I was working in the outsourcing company. Whenever a new client comes, every second client has the same IP addresses in their own private network. So we couldn't start serving the client by making Revolution his own internal network because only some servers were in our data center. So we're doing strange things like, okay, let's put two hosts, one that is directly connected to the private network of the client, another one that is connected to that host and to our infrastructure, so we're logging like, jump to the first host, from that first jump to the second one, then to the client's internal network. Oh my goodness. With proxy command, if I specify something like that, I just type SSH host B, and I jump. From my point of view, it's just like the next host. You don't have to worry about remembering passwords. No, you can use SSH key-based authentication, public key. You can specify as many jumps as you like. That's really cool. So if you can log in somehow over SSH into the host that you need to manage, you can use the same stuff in Ansible. Just use the config. So what else can we do? Well, I'm not using it a lot, but some Netcat version allow us to actually use the web proxy. If you have to use it to get outside, well, you can use it. But let's connect all the stuff that we know. This is some very, very useful example from my point of view. What do you think is that thing doing? Tunnels, yes, that's for sure. Yep. Actually, what I'm doing in here is I'm connecting to some internal host through some other host that is called pośrednik. And actually, whenever I'm connecting there, I'm running, in that case, our desktop, I'm not using it anymore. I'm using X3RDP, but no, this is just an example. So the thing is, I type SSH live, it's my host name, related only to the config file. I connect by jumping through some hosts, and at the end, I get remote desktop on some virtual machine. Why I use it? Well, for example, we have just one visual license in the whole company, but we need to use it from time to time to specify, to actually take a look at some projects, maybe modify it. It wasn't easily accessible when you were outside of the company, so I can use it to connect and do something useful. Sometimes there's other software that only runs on Windows. Okay, let's put it in some place that has good connectivity. Let's jump through, do whatever you want, disconnect. Well, it can be on internal addresses behind NAT, whatever. We are just connecting the thing that we need. And what I'm showing it to you is that actually you can do it with managing Windows. I will tell you a little bit more about it with Ansible. You can use it as one of the examples of jump hosts. Okay, another one. What can you see in here? Who will tell me? Strange, isn't it? You know, it works for a couple of years. Yep. Yep, exactly. So what I did in here, I know it looks a little bit strange. For I don't know how many years we have something like match configuration parameter for the client. So let's forget about this part for a moment. Let's take a look in here. Match host, the host name Unison, it's my name for me to remember. It doesn't have to be related to anything. And then we have an exec that can be something else than exec, but I find exec the most useful. I'm running a comment asking for the A record for unison.net.puchalak. If it returns exit code 0, which means it succeed, then, well, my host name is that one. If it doesn't, that part is skipped unto the next host definition. So my host name is that IP address, but I'm connecting through proxy command, SSH Pluton remote, whatever. Why it is useful? Well, I'm at my home. Actually, I'm using Unison to synchronize data. I'm doing it since, I don't know, January or February or something like that. You know, when you once lose the data, you remember to make backups. And actually, I'm synchronizing my home directories on my own on all of my machines, so I have all the same stuff everywhere. I'm using the Unison software, so that's why the name. So when I am inside my home network, I'm connecting by using SSH Unison. If I'm outside, I don't have to use any other name because I'm actually jumping through that host and I'm connected in the same way. One thing that might seem strange is in here, host Unison user. In SSH, the first match wins. The first match wins. So actually it means that user will always be Puchalak D, but host name and additionally proxy command might change. Why I'm talking about this? Well, if you are on premises, if you are working at the client side, you can use your playbooks, whatever. Then you are going to home or whatever, somewhere else, into your office, and the client calls you and says, okay, we need to change something. And then you says, oh, fuck. I need to modify the different hostname or modify my ssh.config file. No, you don't have to. If you use a trick like this one, you don't care where you are. The only difference is if you are not in .NET.Puchalak network, it will work slower for you. I think we can live with that. Yep.
Both of these have got on the accept list on the destination host.
Yep. Actually, from our point of view, in non-host file, we have just one entry. The only thing that is changing is how we are connecting into that host.
Okay, but this name upper must be resolved.
The one?
On the address the same like below.
If that one doesn't work because they don't have the A record for Unison.net Puchalak, well, we are connecting to that IP through that host. That's it. We don't have to worry about anything else. All our configuration that we are using with SSH Unison, that's it. I put it somewhere so that you can play with it, because actually the essential thing with OpenSSH is to play with it, the same like Ansible. If you play with it, if you break it, if you fix it, you will learn. And, well, in my case, it's actually because I wanted to do something, not just sit for the whole day and wait for some network guys to fix something. And usually in the bigger corporation, yes, they will do it for you for the next day. The problem is I'm just for one day and I have to do something useful. Anyway, let's go further. What else we can do? Two things that we have in here. What can you see? The first one. Does it look familiar to you? Cron, yep. Enter in the cron tab, in the user cron tab. So what we are doing in here? Yes, but we control it. That's the difference. So it's not a backdoor. It's a legitimate access method for normally not accessible networks. Actually, the first time when I saw something like this, it was here in Warsaw a couple of years ago on the ISA meeting. And, well, I was showing a few other things in there. And, you know, imagine those guys who are actually managing security, not dealing with it and making their hands dirty, but they were managing security and, oh my goodness, what a hole in the network. We have to ban SSH. Yeah, even something like this. You know what? I asked them, how many of you are using Skype? Because from the technical point of view, it's doing the same thing. The only difference is we control it. We control it, not someone else. It's under our control. So what I'm doing here, every minute I run a job, which actually is using SSH to connect to my Puchalak D at somewhere internet and set up something that is called remote forwarding. Remote forwarding is a method of making a tunnel that starts on the remote side. So if I connect to some accessible internet host, I can go back in the tunnel and do whatever I want. Another thing that is useful, because you would like to have a fast internet connection. They tell you, okay, it costs that amount of money. And then you are telling them, yes, but please, I would like to have my own IP address that will be static. Because I need to tell some guys in some companies that that IP address is trusted. And they tells you, not possible. Or they tell you, okay, it's possible. You know what? You have to pay for some professional feature. Sometimes the difference in price is really huge and crazy. And actually, I mostly use it for things that I do once for someone. They are using cheap internet connection with dynamically changed IP addresses behind the NAT, and then they ask you, please, can you log in and tell me or fix it? Actually, the fixing is something like 1 minute. You log in, you take a look, oh, just that. The problem is how to connect. This solves it. Please notice I'm using something like Flock. Do you know what is this? FileLock. Yes, exactly, FileLock. So I'm running it every minute, but if there is a log on that file, well, it is not run. If it is not, which means my SSH client died, well, I won't have to wait more than 1 minute. There are better tools like AutoSSH, but this one is something that you have on, I usually used to say that on all Linux boxes, but believe it or not, I find some Unix servers that didn't have VI, so I'm more careful now. Anyway, in here, batch mode, yes, so it wouldn't ask for any password and run on it. Exit not forward failure, another thing that is essential. If we have problems with forwarding, it doesn't make sense to keep the connection. So exit. This is something that can be debated, but when I send something to someone whose Linux knowledge is barely non-existent, I use it, so you don't have to worry about the first connection and authorizing the public key of the host. So this is run somewhere behind NATs, whatever, and this is how I connect in there. That's it. Okay, the first thing, okay, I didn't put the slide, but that's a very good question. What actually can we do to make sure that we'll have collateral damage, or however it's called? In SSHD manual, there is a section authorized keys file format. Sorry, I forgot to put it on the slide. On the second part, I mean on the remote side, when we are accepting the key, we specify comment equal, and I usually put something like slip 365D, which means if you got that private part key, you will be only able to log in and it will run slip for you. Isn't it great? Okay, whatever. Actually, just put something that will be impossible to exploit. That's it. Then you can further specify things like from. So you will be only able to connect from that host. In newer version, we can actually specify more of those know something. But it would be good if we have one. So anyway, you can specify in here what can be possible, what not. Another thing that I have to admit I started using only with when I started using Ansible, it's called reusing control connection. Okay, I used it a couple of times before that. For example, one day we go to some company, and well, there was some email exchange, and I actually specified, yes, we need just one connection into the internet. I come into Warsaw, where I start unpacking our laptops, and a colleague from my study come in, saw me, oh, we started talking, and he said, oh, you are working, you are come here for work today? Yes, you know, our security guy decided to be funny, and he said that if you need just one connection, he will make sure that it will be just one TCP connection. Okay, it made me think a little bit. And what I did, actually I did something like this. How it works. Control master allows you to specify, okay, if we have one SSH connection, we can put all other stuff into the same connection. So from the TCP point of view, it is just one TCP stream divided inside. We can specify the control path that is being used for that connection, and control persist means how long it should last. You can specify yes or no, or you can specify the time. Anyway, this plus dynamic forward, and what I did actually, well, I connect into the remote side, use dynamic forward, which means I set up my own proxy. I set it up in such a way that my colleague were able to just specify in his web browser, okay, use that, my IP and my port. And you should see the guy. It was actually really funny because we didn't say anything. 2 hours passed, we didn't say anything to him that something is not working. So he started to be, actually he was wondering what's happening. He comes by once. He saw that we are working. Then another time he just came in, so some open web pages. It was many years ago. It was times when actually if you try to use your mobile for data connection, it means that you can go into bankruptcy really soon. It took him something like half an hour to come and ask how we did it. It was really a cool guy, I have to admit. It was really nice talking to him. That's the first time that I use it. But right now, why I'm showing it to you? Imagine you have, let's say, just 20 hosts. Or VMs, it doesn't matter. Some of those are, from the network point of view, far away. So your first connection is taking a lot of time because we have to set up all those security stuff, exchanging some packets, make sure it's secure. And after that, we can say the real data that we want. How Ansible works. Well, Ansible works in such a way that it connects all the time. With each task that we specify, it connects, do something, disconnect. Connect, do something, disconnect. Oh my goodness, it would take ages. But they are reusing the control connection. So what is happening? In the first connection, our SSH client goes into the background, and the next connection goes over that specified socket in here. That person C is essential because it makes sure that it is different for each host and user. So we wouldn't get a situation like we just make one socket, connect into 2 hosts, and the first one wins, which means when we try to connect to another one, we are on the second one. No authentication, just raw data. I try to use it sometimes when I was working over my mobile, because sometimes, especially if you are not in the city center, you have delay like half a second, 5 seconds, 35 seconds, sometimes even more, so it makes sense. But this is something that we use, and it speeds up, really, the way how Ansible connects to do some useful stuff. Okay, another thing why I like Ansible, it wasn't like that on the first day. But right now, when you need to authenticate, you can specify in Ansible how you specify become method, sudo and su. That's something you probably all know. But if you need to use something else, well, that's what's supported right now. If you need to lift your ID to be an administrator, to do something useful, you can specify and do it however you like it. There are no limits, or almost no limits. So before I will go any further, actually that's where we can say that slide ends. The next one are just for me so that I won't forget what I wanted to show you. And, well, I told you it's using native methods for connecting. Who of you have ever played with Ansible? Wow, a lot of you. Okay, have you played with Linux only servers or something else? Linux only. So some of you knows how it works. I will show you in a moment. But we have some other ways to connect. For example, Cygwin. Yes, I have to admit, I was trying to use it to have some useful tools on my Windows machine. Well, the end result is I boot physical Windows when I want to play games. I was eagerly trying even to play with those, how it's called, Ubuntu for Windows subsystem, whatever, in Windows 10. Okay, it works in text mode, but still, I do prefer my Linux machine. I know it's Debian, I like it. Maybe not everyone will agree with me that Debian is a good thing. Fortunately, there is no Peter in here, no one to argue. Actually, I would tell you one thing. Choose a good distro, community distro, because it has more tools than the commercial one. I mean for the workstation. Server, well, whatever you like. I have to admit that I'm using different distro for different tasks, so anyway. How it works in Windows. Okay, what is the native management method for Windows? WinRM, yep, Windows Remote Management. That's what we use here. So, how it actually works? Let me show you. It's not that hard, not that complicated, if I do remember correctly. Okay. So, what should we do? I will use RDP client to connect into Windows VM. It's freshly configured. So do not expect any fancy stuff. It's just the basics on what we can do to actually make sure that it will happen. What we need to make sure will work in Windows? Well, firewall. So we need to be able to connect using WinRM. If you want, you can even use Kerberos for authentication. It's up to you. I'm not using it because I just wanted to show you something simple. I'm sorry that it is so small. Unfortunately, I wasn't expecting full HD projector. Yeah, we can try to. Fonts. Let's try this one. Okay, it's a little bit better. So, one thing we need to do is, well, in normal systems, I mean Unix, Linux, we use Python. In the different world like Windows, what is the common method of scripting? The PowerShell, so that's what we have to use actually. So the first thing we should do if we would like to be able to run our PowerShell scripts is to actually specify that we are going to bypass the execution policy, and that's what that's what actually am I going to do. Come on, copy and paste should work. Oh yeah. PowerShell execution policy bypass, and then use a command. I will show that script for you in a moment. What is this? I think it's not sharp. Let me try to make it better. Is it better now? So after a few tests, I just make myself just one script that I have to run. Windows 2012 and higher. Okay, I haven't tested 2016 yet. With Windows 2008, we need to actually install PowerShell with some version, I don't remember which one. And after that, we have to reboot the machine. That's the only drawback. Anyway, let's run it. Maybe it won't look too nice, but it should work. So, yeah, PowerShell 3 is already installed. Self-signed SSL certificate generated. We actually decided, okay, let's use WinRM. So we can try to manage it. Why don't we use the bash on Windows? Because You mean Unix subsystem for Windows? No? Oh. Okay. I have to admit I didn't know about it. I have to check it. Yeah, I know that they actually ported OpenSSH, which actually I really love. But I have to admit I didn't know that they have a native bash and it has access to the full server, full computer. Wow, that is great. I have to admit the only things that I played from Microsoft recently was Powershell on Linux. And I ran a few comments and I said, oh, it even works, cool. Let's put it on my to-do list. And unfortunately, my to-do list is way too long. But, you know, maybe I will find some times anyway. So, all we have to do is to make sure we can run it. Now, what we should do. Okay, Ansible -m setup. I will explain everything in a moment. If I remember correctly, it should be something like this. I'm using Ansible module setup, which should connect into the machine and give me information from something that we called factor. From our point of view, we see it's 64-bit architecture, BIOS date, whatever. Oh, Ansible distribution, Microsoft Windows Server 2012. That's cool. We can use it later. Sorry. So from that point of view, we can see, wow, it works. Now, how it is being configured. Okay. Before we start to manage any host, we need to specify in the hosts file what we are going to manage. It's an ini file. We have a section, which is a group name, and we have entries, which actually means host names. The host name can be DNS ones, or in that case, I just put an IP address, whatever. I put it into the Windows section. Why? Because Ansible is very elastic. We have something like group variables, group vars. Windows, in that case, I can put lots of files. I have just one, out YAML. It's a short one, as you can see, and it looks like this one. Jesus, now you know my secret password. Anyway, what do we have in here? Ansible host, okay, for hosts in group Windows. Ansible user is administrator, no surprises in here. Ansible password is, please don't write it down. Ansible port that we are going to use, and the essential part, Ansible connection WinRM, native method. How it works in practice? Well, let me put it like this. It works. Now it works better than it works before. It's still a little bit limited from my point of view, because on normal Linux boxes I have that amount of modules. As for Windows modules, well, it's quite a huge one right now, but still not too many, but it works. You can do really basic stuff, whatever you need, you can use it to configure. As you can see, I specified certification validate ignore because I don't want to play with Kerberos stuff and other things. I just wanted to show it to you that it works, just the basic stuff. So you can use it to manage Windows machine. You can copy some software, install it, whatever. I will show you something that I use in a production, so that you may start thinking about, okay, maybe that Ansible is not that bad. But let me show you the script. Okay, it's in my Windows subdirectory. I was actually using, that command. I hope it will be visible. What is essential here is that I decide, okay, as a home of folder of my RDP client, I will use that directory so that I can reuse it later. Like I can put whatever I need in there. Now let's see the command that I actually run. It's Ansible prep. It's just this. I'm not kidding. It's not that I invented it. Actually, I'm a lazy person. I don't want to retype 3 commands all the time or even do copy and pasting and copy and paste engineering. So I decided, okay, let's lose some hours, work hours, and try to make a script out of it. So what I'm doing is, okay, set execution policy to unrestricted. I know security guys, especially the Windows guy, may say, oh my goodness, it's the price you have to pay if you want to manage Windows with Ansible. It's up to you if it's acceptable. Then you have to enable PS remoting. So we can actually connect remotely. And you run 2 scripts. Upgrade to PS3, upgrade to Powershell 3, and then configure remoting for Ansible. The last one I got from Ansible. The before last one I got from Ansible too, if I do remember correctly. Anyway, I just show you. I connect over RDP, have some files in there, copy and paste 1 line, and I can use that Windows machine, I can manage the Windows machine from Ansible, and believe me, now it worked quite cool. The beginnings when actually I saw on the first time that there are Windows modules, oh my goodness. That setup that I ran was quite a huge one. Before that, it was very, very limited. But we'll go to it in a moment. So, what can we do? I have a simple playbook that I would like to show you. It's a little bit related to what I do and how it works. The playbook is the set of rules that are going to be run in a specific order. What is cool is that actually you can run it as many times as you like, unless you fuck it up. What I mean by that, it's like in mathematics. If you specify all your rules in the so-called idempotent way, which means 2 plus 2 is always 4, then it's good for you. If you created a rule like x is equal x plus 2, oh my, you are in a trouble. So, what do we do? YAML file, what is essential is spaces. It doesn't matter how many spaces we have, but what is essential is how those things are related to each other. That's the only essential stuff. On the beginning, we specify for host Windows, for host in Windows group. I have just one, but, well, no problem. I can put 100 in there, and it will work for them. User root. I have to admit, I don't know why I have user root in there. It's probably some leftover from the previous Unix scripts. It doesn't make sense, but anyway. Sudo no, leftover from the old Ansible where we didn't have a become, it was just a sudo. Anyway, something that I'm not using too often in my playbooks, vars. I defined a variable. Why I want to show it to you? Well, sometimes I would need to make sure that if I install something like agent for monitoring, I would like to copy the plugins into a good directory, not the bad one. In Windows, we have program files and program files 32 or some x86. I have to admit, I never remember that part. If you look at it, you will know what I mean. That's essential stuff. So actually, I'm putting a program files variable, which is Ansible environment from module setup, program files, but only if the processor architecture is x86, which means 32 bits. If not, program files, and I specify the parameter. What is cool in here? Well, you can reuse it however you like it. One thing to remember when you will start playing with Ansible, something that I do it all the time. I mean, not every day, but something like every quarter, every half a year. I put a variable name with minus in here. Yep, if you make such a mistake, you will be debugging it for at least 15 minutes before you find it out, or even more. Don't ever put a minus as inside the variable name, because Ansible will treat it as two variables, which does not exist usually. Then we have the task. Tasks are simple. Stop VNC service. So you use WinService module, where you specify the parameters name, VNC service, ultra VNC or whatever, state, stopped. That's cool. We would like to make sure that that service is in a stopped state. If it is running, it will stop it. If it is not running, well, that's good. That's great. We don't have to worry about it. Yep. So it will say, okay, nothing to worry about it. If it was supposed to stop it, we'll see changed. Something was changed. Yep. Tags. Okay, that's something that I use a lot, and I will tell you in a moment. Start mode manual, that's another parameter for that service. Tags. You can actually specify tags. Why I use tags? Well, sometimes I modify something, or I just want to make sure that I will configure just one part of something, and for that I'm using tags. You don't have to use it, but I find it really useful. Yeah, to pick just the part of code that is using tags, Windows or VNC or whatever you specify. Sometimes I even put a special tag, from my point of view, test, in just 2 or 3, this is how it's called, tasks, to make sure that I will test just those tasks, not the huge one. I may be crazy, but I'm trying to do a disaster recovery solution based on Ansible, so that everything that I can will be installed. Well, that's not Ansible, but I will do it with other software, configured, run, started, whatever, with Ansible. If there is something that I cannot do with Ansible, well, then we have a backup. Why? Because I may be crazy, but from my point of view, it's about repeatability. If we move to a newer version, that's great. Just test if those playbooks are working. If you will have just backup, you have to do everything manual. Anyway, we have tag. Okay, stop something. Remove the auto start from the specific location. In that case, win file, state absent. So you make sure there is no file in there or directory, whatever. Now, one thing that is essential you will find during your working with Ansible. There are lots of places where you have things like state. And by default, it is present, for example. Usually, you don't care about it. Well, believe me, it is a good habit to put all the defaults in your play. Even things like they are by default. I will give you an example. I don't know, it was something like a month or 2 ago, I don't remember exactly. I was actually deploying the part of the playbook that was configuring syslog to actually gather logs into the log host. That was a cool idea, and okay, let's see how many data will come. So let's do it in the most simple way using UDP. One thing that I forgot. Well, if you are gathering UDP logs over UDP from the firewall that are logging every UDP package, you are creating perpetuum mobile. Because for every packet sent, it gets logged and gets sent again. Wow. My second mistake, I didn't specify a state. If I did specify a state, then I will be able to actually notify what's going on, change from present to absent, rerun it again, problem solved. Well, I didn't do it. So that's why I'm telling you, I know they are the defaults, but it's really a good idea to put it. Okay, there was no problem with syslog. Actually, I managed to kill, or maybe not exactly kill. No. The internal firewall routers. They got something after analyzing the monitoring system between 350, 450 megabits per second. Yep. And you know what? That amount of traffic actually only started those small boxes to drop connections. And believe it or not, there were ubiquitous edge road light, which cost something like 400 zlotys netto. And I was really surprised that we were able to actually survive such a huge, okay, maybe it wasn't exactly survive, but they were able to cope somehow with such amount of traffic. Okay, another one that can be useful, but you have to be really careful about this. Name and something like win command or any command, shell, other stuff. It's not omnipotent, which means you run it, you don't know what will happen if you run it again. In that case, it's just using Windows command line tools to actually kill any remaining processes. Sometimes stopping a service is not enough because some users might be smart enough not to start a service, but to click on the icon and start the process. Okay, let's kill it. We want to make sure no VNCs are running. One thing that is essential, or what if there is no such process running? We'll have an error. Okay, this is the last task, no problem here, but please notice here, ignore errors, yes. So I assume that, okay, it might end with an error, but we ignore it. Then we might use it later, so we can register the variable kill output, and we can use that variable later to actually find out, okay, it kills something or not, or whatever it was returning. The best example is if you do something like stat on the file and take a look at the variable, you will see lots of dates like modification, change, access, permissions, owner. Wow. Half a screen or even more of data that you can use. In here, yeah. I'm just thinking, I'm not sure. Normally, I would say it is a great idea because we make sure what we are running, but I'm not sure if in Windows I wouldn't have to run another task to find out which directory the task is. I'm not sure if it is in the same directory on 32 and 64-bit machine. That's what I'm not sure. That's why I don't know. Oh my goodness. I have to admit I never dived so much into that part. I simply tested it and I know that that part works. Another thing that I actually implemented in here, changed when. Why? Hello. Hello. Another thing that I implemented is changed when. Why? I'm trying to make my playbooks so that when I run it, it will make sure those systems are configured as they should be. But the question is, what happens if we have things like win command, do something? Well, actually I would like to make sure that when I run my huge, sometimes playbooks, which are running lots of tasks, at the end I would like to have one information. Did we have to change anything? If not, that's good. Nothing was changed on my productional systems or test systems or whatever. If we have to change something, oh, it's better to find out why we have to change something. In that case, I specify, okay, it only changes when kill output.rc return code is different than 0. No, just like this. I know that it might be a little bit limited from Windows point of view and Ansible, so maybe it's not the best tool to actually do it on the larger scale. But if you are using Ansible in different places, you can use it to manage Windows machines too. That's something that I think can be really nice. Okay. VMware. I have a very mixed feelings about it. I maybe even show you a little bit why. But let me tell you, okay, it works. It works somehow. What I mean somehow? From the technical point of view, if you have enterprise licenses, then it is good for you. If you don't, then it's not exactly good for you. Things like, okay, in enterprise VMware, you have things like distributed switches. So you configure one switch which is distributed over all your virtualization hosts. That works. If you don't have enterprise licenses, you have standard switches, which means you have to make sure that your standard switches configured each per host are being configured in the same way. And the problem is in here, for example, that, well, in distributed switches, it works great. In standard switches, well, in standard switches, not everything is implemented, so let me show you how it might look. Oh, yeah. I think it will be better. So, we have a small playbook, very small one. Host VMware LSX, gather facts false. Don't ask me why, I have some problems, but I will tell you a few words about it later. We decide that connection is local. A little bit more about it. Later, user is a standard administrator become false, and now. In here we specify variables. Okay, the data center name, cluster name, host name. Host name is not being used if you don't have enterprise licenses. I will show in a moment. Validate certifications, validate certs. If you don't have it done correctly, it's better to specify it to false. vCenter host name, vCenter user, vCenter password. Oh yeah, vCenter password. It's not a good idea to put such things into the code. So what we are doing is, okay, var prompt, ask me for the password. Cool. I run it, it asks me for a password, and then it uses, because it has it as a variable. Okay, so the whole idea is to make sure, okay, I have few VMware boxes. Let's make sure that they are configured in the same way. So we have local action, we specify what should be done, VMware port group name with items and the stuff like this. Okay, so I run it. And, well, it works a little bit strangely. It should run on 2 hosts. On one of those hosts it works. On the other one it doesn't, at least from the output of Ansible. I look at the VMwares, well, on one host it did it. On the other one it didn't do it. I don't know why. So after some searching, browsing the internet, whatever, I found a solution. Okay. I'm sorry that I'm not showing you all the nodes because I'm not sure if I have removed all the essential data. So that's why I will show it, just part of it to you in a moment. Please give me one more time. Okay. Okay, so what I was supposed to do is actually go into the module from Ansible and search for such string, and you know what? If you don't have the enterprise license, the auto of the module assumes that you have just one host, no vSphere, so, well, the first one goes. And it stops there. So what you have to do? Well, change that 0 to 1, run it again. It's a dirty workaround, but it works. I still like it because, you know, if you try to automate mouse clicking, With mouse clicker, I would probably prefer to play some shooting game than clicking some configuration. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I was thinking about learning more about Powershell and do it from the Powershell on Windows VM, but I decided Ansible is too cool to actually just drop it here. So, well, there are some problems. I was trying to do some other stuff with VMware, but unfortunately, the place where I can test it is, the thing is that VMware has problem with itself. When I was trying to deploy some VMs using Ansible, the vSphere decided, okay, let's eat as much RAM as we have. Let's put as much data as we can in the swap. Let's drop actually some data on the disk. So let's fill some partitions. And let's go with load up to 400. Probably we should upgrade that VMware, but there are lots of other changes. So it has a little bit lower priority. We just find out that sometimes you can just query in that VMware for something, and you have the same thing. So the best way is to actually kill the vSphere, start it again. So right now, I have a very limited experience. Some parts of it work. There are new modules coming all the time. Maybe not every release, but every 2 or 3 releases, you will have some new VMware modules. So it's still being developed. It's on the to-do list as an important part. So you can use it. If you have enterprise licenses, I know that it works. I know some people that actually are using it. So it can be quite a nice stuff. Where I have my slides. So that's why I put the question mark with VMware, because I'm not so sure. Okay, let me show you some roles a little bit more advanced so that you will see what actually can we do in here. What actually are roles? Roles is where we specify some tasks together with variables, and usually we decide, okay, those hosts should run those roles. So it's something that we can reuse in different environments, in different hosts, whatever. In here, it's information actually, not the newest one because this one has some problems. The newer one is on the production. How to configure sugar wall firewalls in a cluster environment. So what we have in roles, we have something like tasks. In there we specify tasks. I will show it to you in a moment. We have templates. I will tell you more about templates a little bit later, but templates allow us to create usually config files with templates. We have so-called handlers. I will tell you more about handlers in a moment too. So let's see the tasks. Mine YAML. I'm trying to put the mine YAML file as simple as I can. So I usually use include something, include something, include something. And sometimes that something can be included only for special things. For example, configure interfaces. I did it only for Debian machines. And what is important? Ansible OS family Debian, and the host has to be in the sugar wall group. So my sugar wall group means, okay, these are firewalls, I configure interfaces there. Another one, configure keep alive and contract D, Debian sugar wall and sugar wall management not in group names. Why sugar wall management is not in there? Well, it is not the one that is doing that dirty stuff by sorting packages and implementing our security policy. Management is a place where we can log in and actually rerun configuration, which means build the configuration, deploy it on our firewalls. So we have a central management for firewalls. And for that, we don't need keep alive, we don't need contract D, it's just the management. And then the last one, sugar wall Debian, some things related to Debian. Okay, let's see something more complicated. So it can be something easy, like, okay, name, install every name. I know it might sound strange, but actually on Firewalls, I really love the idea that the interface's name show me what zone we are. So I don't have to remember, okay, VLAN 1353. Oh my goodness. Is it management or is it something else? No, I have the name DMZ. Okay, I know what comes in here. Even slave, bonding. They have to actually be connected to more than one switch. So that's what I use. VLAN for VLAN usage and few other stuff. Nothing really fancy. So let's see this one. It is going to be more interested. So install, and we specify what? The typical way is that I can specify separate package, separate task, and make it really big one. But in here, I do something. Name, and that's something that you should use. In the older documentation, you might see something like action, if I do remember correctly. Whatever, name is for us, so whenever we run a Playbook, we see what is going to be run. Then we are using the apt module with package, and in that package we specify item. Actually, we have two items, contract D, keep alive D. Well, that's it. It will install, in that case, two packages with their dependencies, of course, and state present. Then configure a file, and now I did some magic in here. I mean, I'm using the templates. I'm thinking about actually changing it a little bit, but, well, this is the template for creating configuration for keep alive. What is keep alive, by the way? Keep alive D. What? Yeah, we can call it like that. Actually, it's using VRP protocol to make sure that it notifies the peers. One of them is mastered, because that's the typical configuration. Oh yeah, we can do load balancing too. Exactly. Sorry, for heartbeat, yeah. The whole idea is that we have, in that case, there are 3 firewalls, but we can have two or more. If one of them goes down, the other one, okay, all the traffic should come to me. I'm the master now. And in here, I decided to use a template. The template is called, what is the name of the templating system in Ansible? No. Jinja, yes, Jinja. That's the name how we use the templating. It's a separate project, of course. And what do we have in here? Well, we specify whatever we want to put. If we want to use some variables, we use double brackets. So I don't know even the Polish name for those brackets. This is the variable that gets filled with the variable content, with the value. We can use ifs. If some variable is defined, then for every variable name in those variables, specify .entry, and for and if. So after you do something crazy like in here, you can just modify the variables, and based on it, it will generate the config file for you. A simpler one or more complicated, however you like it. If VRP virtual IP address is excluded is defined, well, VRP is a little bit limited. You can have maximum 20 virtual IPs. It's sometimes not enough. Well, that's easy. You don't need to make sure that you move all those IPs. You can specify, okay, the important ones are those. The rest can be quite huge, is being moved with the important ones. So if for and if, the same goes, okay, if you need to specify virtual routes, why not? I use it. For example, I decide why should I have routing for the networks when I'm not the master? From my point of view, it doesn't make sense. So only master will have a public IP address, for example, and well, that's it. Oh yeah. Synchronization is faster, but from my point of view, actually, from my point of view, it's better because I feel I more control it. I don't have IP addresses in certain zones, so it's a little bit more secure. The rules are there, but no IP addresses, no routing. It should be more secure from that point of view. So you can do some crazy stuff. I know I put it into the code. I'm not sure if it is the best place, but I can just take that part, put it into the templates directory into one of those files, and the name of the file with .j2, and decide, okay, use template. That's it. Right now, I wanted to put it into the code because that code is going to be the part of the documentation for that system. So that's why it's not separate, but it's up to you. You are the guys who are actually, or girls, who are actually going to decide how it should work. Now, we have something like notify. Where it is being used? Well, you modify the configuration, you need to restart the service. That's easy. But it doesn't make sense to restart the service if you haven't modified anything. So that's why if you change something, the notify will actually fire the handler, which is called restart keep alive. And we specify in the handlers what it means. When the task changed, not when it is okay, when it changed, then we will run something defined under handlers and restart keep alive name. Yes, we can put it like this. Exactly. Why it is great? Imagine that I will simply put another task, restart keep alive all the time. Whenever I run it, my firewalls, restart keep alive, changing master. It doesn't make sense. You can break that production event like this. Well, go ahead. Sometimes there are things that you cannot do with traditional module. For example, I decided that the best idea is not to create the config files from scratch. Let's take it from the user share doc contract the examples and copy it as our configuration file. So, I'm using something that you have to be very careful, shell module. Shell module specify a comment, but as an argument, it has creates, which means on the first run, it will copy and create the file. But when that file or directory, doesn't matter, specify either creates, exists, that task is treated as okay, nothing changed. It's very cool because actually you're getting a good example and then you modify it later.
Then shouldn't you use file instead of shell?
File is actually copying from my management workstation into the remote one. With copy, I'm running it on the remote ones. There are sometimes problems when you want to take something, move something. We are actually using fetch to get the data. We are using file to put the data, to copy the data. But still, sometimes you have to be more creative when you need to do something that you like. I'm not saying that this is the best one. Maybe I will have to sit on it after, let's say, a month or even a week and decide, oh, that's stupid, I can do it better. And rewrite it. It's just like with code, you know. You are just making it. Looks better or not, it's up to you. Okay, you can specify some system CTLs, variables. Oh yeah, some stuff that I decided is not worth. Configure contract D. Just copy it. Contract D is actually for making sure that we are keeping the states of connection synchronized in our firewall cluster. This is because it's so easy. I don't know why we don't use it by default. It's really very easy to use it. I'm not sure if there is something interesting in here. Let me just take a look. Oh, yeah, it can be interested. Huh. Okay, install shortwall full. Okay, on the enforcement nodes, those that actually deal with the real traffic, we have shortwall light, the minimum that we need. On the management, we need a full shortwall. So we actually install shortwall doc because we might need documentation and shortwall, but only if when Ansible fully qualified domain name is equal shortwall management defined somewhere. Okay, I could use something like this. I could specify only in name of the group in group names. You can do the same stuff on however you like it. On manage node, install only shortwall light. So it's different, not equal. Create administrators, add firewall admins to some management group, defined somewhere. I will show you the variables files in a moment. And do all the stuff that actually you need to do to make sure that it exists. Create some directory. In that directory, create a configuration directory for specific firewall group. Put some proper permissions on this so it wouldn't be too accessible. Some things should be done but are not. That's why that fixed me. Modify something. Line in file. Line in file is a module that allows you to modify existing file. In that case, I make sure that if there is reject which starts with startup equal, then it has line startup equal 1. So in that case, it means, okay, shortwall should start up automatically. Enable firewalling, create SSH keys. So because we are using SSH to put the configuration into the managed host, into the managed firewall. So create the key, get the public key, because we need it later. That's why we have that fetch from the remote host. Please notice that on the remote host, it's source, ATC something, SSH pub, destination, on my management workstation, in that case, it's on my laptop. Config files, SSH keys, shortwall, some name, .ssh pub. Fail on missing, so if it's missing, we have a problem, it should fail, so I will know I have to fix it. When shortwall export dir is defined, that's you know it, and now the really cool stuff, delegate to. I forgot to show you delegate to a little bit higher. Delegate to actually means do it on specific host. Luckily, I used delegate to only on one host, but when I was trying to play delegate to on a set of hosts, it's not that easy, but it's doable. So actually, even if that task is specified for something, it will be running on a different host. Copy keys and stuff like that. So whatever you need to do to actually configure, that's what you have specified. Change some keys, modify some options.
Why did you pass another type of algorithm to SSH?
Why I did?
Or
Okay, I'm a little bit crazy sometimes about security, privacy, and stuff like that. From the SSH point of view, we have a couple of algorithms that we can use for our private and public keys. The one that is quite secure probably is RSA, a very old one, actually one of the first known public algorithm that we can use, asymmetric cryptography that we know. Then we have elliptic curves, which we know that NSA put their dirty hands in there and modify it. That's why I don't want to use it. Then we have this AD25519, oh my goodness, from DJ Bernstein, something that those that I trust, I mean real cryptographers, not me, says that we can trust it. So that's why I trust it, and that's why actually I choose it. It's something that should be quite secure. Okay, actually here, you do whatever you like. So that's such a playbook might look like. Another role that I would like to show you is checkmk. By the way, do you know what is checkmk? Oh, what it is? You are using it. You like it, I guess. You even laugh. I see it from your eyes. Actually, when I started playing with Nagios many years ago, one thing that I would say about Nagios, well, nice thing is using text files. That's cool. But if you make a small mistake, it doesn't start. Oh my goodness. If you want to configure something, you create templates for the templates so that you can achieve some kind of automation. And one day, one of clients, when I come to do some IT, they have nothing, really nothing, no even no DNS. We are not even talking about monitoring, and well, I would choose Zabbix. But their, let's call it business partner, say, we are doing some monitoring, it will be Nagios, we'll sell it to you soon. Okay, so let's choose Nagios. After playing with Nagios, I found checkmk, which is actually agent-based monitoring. What is cool about checkmk? You install an agent, it will return you loads of information that you parse locally. So instead of asking for every service, for everything that you are checking, one by one and generate lots of resources, or actually eat your CPUs and memory, you are getting that huge of list that you just parse. What it means? Well, I don't know. I haven't done any really scientific comparison, but it's something like 5-6 times more that you can actually at least monitor on the same hardware.
So actually it works like a pattern for Nagios?
Actually, it's something like this. We can put it that it's automation for Nagios. It's called, actually it's called, called something which calls passive tests, passive checks instead of the active ones. What is cool, you install the agent, you know everything about the server. So let me show you how it works with multiple systems. That's why I love Ansible. So we have a task, the main one, 2 includes. Why 2 only? Oh, anyway. The one is for Linux agent, the other one is for Windows agents. So with one tool, with one Ansible, I can automate installing monitoring on Linux machines, on Windows machines, whatever you like. Okay, so let's see how it looks. Oops, as usually, I should sit, not type my, not that one. Okay. Let's see the Windows part. So, let's create some directory. Let's copy the agent that we have prepared the binary. Let's install it automatically, as you can see. We are checking if it exists and stuff like that. Then something that unfortunately is really slow, but I don't have to worry about it. The best way would be to replace it with the zip probably. Copy plugins, oh my goodness. Whew. It's really slow comparing to all the other modules because it's probably doing all the tips with comparing one file one by one. Anyway, those plugins are useful because they allows you to get more data from your monitoring systems. Then we copy a config. Then in here, something that you might find useful, flash handlers. We had those notifies, do something. Okay, cool. Let's actually make sure that we'll run it right now, not somewhere at the end of the playbook. Set the ses script as the default for Visual Basic scripts. Well, it was really fun to find out everything is configured in the same way. Some windows are working, some windows are not from the monitoring point of view. Okay, we found the solution, it's automated. I don't have to remember about it. I run it, that's it. Okay. Firewall, other stuff, I think that's something we can skip. Restart the service if it's needed. Let's see that part, installing on Linux machines. Okay, we have YAML-based systems. I mean, Red Hat or Debian use different tool. I would do it differently. This is quite an old one, so I would do it differently right now. But I will tell you a little bit more about it later. Few things are not needed. Actually, I decided not to use Xina today, so I do another thing. What we have in here, plugins. Oh yeah. Get public key of the Nagios server, the one that is going to be used from the Nagios server to connect over SSH for the monitoring agent. Then put that key, configure it, and stuff like that. So instead of going like with Windows without any cryptography, see you later, I'm actually using SSH as a secure connection, using keys and stuff like that. The keys is configured. I'm not sure where it is, if it's in the playbook or if it is just in the key. It is configured so only it will return data from the checkmk agent. Some copying, preparing, oh yeah, some strange stuff. Get the key, prepare it in some useful way, copy it, whatever. Anyway, the cool thing is that, well, you have a new system, you run it, then I include another task, check mk generate config. Which is using templates to generate the config file. Please don't look about the Nagios part. It's really old stuff. Generate whatever it needs. Run rescan. There is a race condition there. It's not fixed completely. But the thing is, I have a new machine. I run my production playbook on it. And at the end, I have it in my monitor. Sometimes I have to rerun, recognizing what services are available. Just with one playbook. So it doesn't matter if it's Unix, Linux, if it is Windows, you can have it all in one place, which is something really, really cool. The Windows machines are not using automatically generated configs because the Windows machines are, in that case, they are being configured in a strange way, so that is why. But, well, if you want, you can use it like this. Oh, yeah, one more thing that I would like to show you. Yep. Actually, there are two things. The simpler one. Why we have something like that? I told you can do whatever you like. Ubiquiti is soapbox, something like that. Very cheap, very powerful. That if you treat it nicely, it can do some cool stuff. What I actually did, I modified a little bit. I make sure that it's working in a highly available environment. It's synchronizing rules and stuff like that. And now the thing is, okay, what if it fails? So we need a process to automate something that you buy a new Ubiquiti, take it out of the box, and configure it automatically. This is the part that actually is fetching the config. So this is actually, we have defined which config which were specified. So it fetches it, save it into destination config files. Then I'm using, I don't know, do you know what it is, by the way? Is anyone old enough to recognize that CI? RCS, is it saying you something? Revision control system. You know, when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth before CVS, we have RCS. It was just, you can use it on just one file. Then we have CVS, which is actually RCS with ability to work on multiple files. So this is a very simple control system. So whenever I took something new, I have a new revision. Why? If you make a mistake, and it was a week ago, you don't remember what exactly you fucked up, then, well, you just take a look manually into the history. Oh, it's that one. Cool. Yeah, you can roll back, actually. Okay, I don't have it in my hardware. Well, if I can log in over SSH, I can have it here. So actually, I'm creating a new revision whenever it's changed. Of course, I'm doing it only when Edgemax fetch changed, which means something was really changed. I was trying to play with rules, but when I did it, the version of Ansible that I used wasn't working too nicely. We have 3 or 4 modules for YOS. Wayata, is it telling you something? It was quite a nice distribution, but it was bought by Broadcom? Whatever. Brocade, sorry. So now it's only commercial one, whatever. So we have a few forks. The community one is called YOS. The one available in the, oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the hardware producer. Ubiquiti, oh yeah. It's called a little bit differently. Anyway, we have modules. Probably they work correctly right now. I tested it 1 or 2 revisions of Ansible before. It wasn't working for me. So I'm not using it. But anyway, I have a very cool idea of, okay, let's gather the configuration. Now let me, the variables. You can configure just something like that. So in that case, I'm using Edgemax run configure command that I used to do something useful. And that one is nice. So the first thing that I do is actually there is a 7 or something steps of how to prepare. You take the Ubiquiti router, you reset it into the defaults so that it has the default IP address. You connect by using second card, whatever. And now when you have it prepared, okay, delete the old key from known host. Add a new one by using SSH key scan. Now, shell Edgemax run command show version check for it and register Ubiquiti Edgemax version. So you get the firmware version. If it needs updating, you copy it, you install it, so you update it. So it doesn't matter if it has old or not. Well, you do it automatically. Install new firmware version, reboot, and now it is cool. You run it. It usually runs for something like 15 minutes. I don't remember exactly. But you run it, you forget about it. After 15 minutes, take a look. Okay, it should work now. I can take it, put it into the server room. So it waits a little bit to make sure it's all being sent into the flash. Then we have reboot. And now, what is happening? Async pull, ignore errors, and now wait for. We are actually waiting for that machine to come up. If you are ever going to do some rolling updates, that's a very similar piece of code that you are going to do. You specify serial, like 1, 2, or 10% of your machines that will be rebooted at the same time, or restarted or whatever, and you are waiting for it to come up. You can specify that the timeout is, in that case, 20 minutes. If it didn't come out in 20 minutes, you have a problem. So it's better not to wait till the end of the day. And, well, it's only being done when we are changing the firmware version. Now, I tried to do it manually, but decided that the simpler the better. So after it come up with a new firmware, I specify things, okay, usually those stuff is not connected to some internet. But I would like to do something useful. So include role apt cacher ng. In that case, I'm configuring, because it's Debian really, I'm configuring it to use a proxy, so it can access some repositories if it needs to. My modification that was once being done by hand are being done automatically. Copy the binary, in that case it's contract.deb, which means a package for contract D. I install it, create some directories, copy config files, everything that is really strange. And as for copying config files, well, in case of the router, there is one thing in config something, in /config something directory, that actually keeps all the configuration. Well, you copy it back, do a final reboot, everything is configured automatically. You don't have to specify anything. That's really something that you can use if you like. I haven't put how to run it. Oops. Let me see if I can show it to you. Oh, yeah. The whole playbook is actually being run like this. As a documentation steps, how you should configure it. It asks you for a target host. The default is specified in here, and it goes. If you just press enter, it takes the defaults. That's it. Sure.
On the Unity devices,
Yep.
in general, it's like this. Works, but when I set up any of the comments on the SSH on it,
Yep.
then of course after reboot is deleted configuration because it must be provisioning from the Ubiquiti software to
Yep.
save on the main current field. And your
Mhm.
change is only temporary, or you every time when device is up.
Actually, I did it in such a way that it survives reboot. I will try to find it in vars somewhere. Yep. Everything you put into /config, scripts postconfig d, will survive. In that case, I have a script, for example.
Okay, because you use the FMAX, it's other class of devices.
Oh, yeah?
Most use the Unity access point.
Ah,
And
okay.
This one is not like this.
I haven't gone so deeply into those access points. In the documentation, they stated, okay, when we reboot, we delete everything unless it is in /config something, if I do remember correctly.
Not on this chip.
Maybe. I haven't played with those. Oh, okay. But they are really, really cool stuff. So you can specify what should survive, what should be copied, whatever. I know that you can do lots of other stuff. Oh, there's one thing that I wanted to show you. Just please give me a moment. Maybe just one last roll, because I think there is a very nice example. I told you that I would do lots of things differently because you play with it, you learn it, and please look at over top in here. Include vars. Include vars, which means include variables from specific location, but we have the vars directory and specify Ansible distribution minus Ansible distribution major version or whatever, or just Ansible distribution, or just Ansible OS family, or package defaults. What happens? The first one, it hits. The first one is set. So actually, in that case, what you can do is you can specify that, okay, for Red Hat 6.8, use those variables. But for Red Hat 7, use those. For Debian, use those. For Debian 8, use those, whatever. Yep. And now, instead of using yum, apt, whatever, package, install the package name. And it takes it from those variables. What is changing with Ansible? It's being developed all the time. I have to admit that things that were working, I don't know, something like a year or 2 years ago, right now might not work. It's even changing that much. Yep. Maybe not that, no, maybe not that much. But actually, it gets better. On the beginning, I was starting playing with Ansible 1.5, and the best things that I did was actually I was having 2 or 3, usually, different versions of Ansible using virtual env, because on one of those something didn't work, and it was something different. Right now, it's much, much better condition, but still you might be surprised by some changes. So the newer, usually the better. Right now, we are nearing the 2.3 release, or maybe it was already released, I'm not sure about it, where there is something that I'm waiting for, like OVIRT, lots of modules, and lots of modules for IPA. Lots of play I will have. Yep.
How many machines do you have in production environment right now?
12 to 15 Windows machines and about 20 Linux machines.
And all those machines are connected to right now and working?
Yeah, it is just on one client, and I have a huge playbook. I can show you parts of it. It is that playbook, starting with Ansible control machine, which actually prepares the management machine. I mean, install all the stuff that I need, like Python modules for VMware, API, Python modules for WinRM, and stuff like that. Then it goes to something that is common, like apt-cacher ng, because most of my systems don't have any access to the internet. So I would like to apply timely updates. For example, half a day ago, I was talking about live kernel patching. I'm crazy about stuff like that on the SUSE Expert Days. But I have to admit, I have lots of machines that are updating automatically. Not all of those, but most of them. And the only access to the internet they have is through the proxy. In that case, it's called apt-cacher ng, only to the packages, nothing else. Then some common stuff for Debian, Oracle Linux, Common Linux security, bonding. As you can see, there are lots of fix me, which means they are on my to-do list. Yep.
How much time per day do you spend with Ansible Playbook?
That's a hard question, depends. Let me put it that way. When you are trying to do something, you have 2 options. Do it manually, then we create the playbooks from your notes. This is usually faster. Or start from the scratch by writing Ansible playbook and apply it incrementally to do something. And check the results. I'm trying to do the second way. The problem is that sometimes you might hit a bug and you can lose easily half a day or a day by trying to solve something, and at the end you might decide, okay, it wasn't worth, let's dump it all. Or at the end you might, oh my goodness, such a stupid mistake, it should take me 5 minutes. So it's really, really hard. The way how I actually work is I do trainings and other stuff, so sometimes I'm not looking at this for a month. There is luckily another guy who knows the basic stuff, so, well, I'm trying to make sure that when I'm not there, that one productional runs fine. For that, I'm using checking with differences. So I'm checking if there are any differences, then I run it before I leave. So I make sure that I don't leave him in some not nice situation. I'm just make sure that it works. Of course, bugs happen all the time. Just this Monday, I find a bug in my template for VRRP, for Kibelive deconfiguration generation. So you should always verify. And I'm not saying it is the Ansible fault. It was my fault. Actually, it was generating currently, but I make a small mistake, and it wasn't reading the whole configuration file. It happens. That's why you have to verify it. And my whole idea is totally crazy, but I would like to have that goes into such mode that we can recreate almost everything from scratch. I know how it sounds, but my plans for disaster recovery is to be able to start everything from one laptop, from one pen drive, and probably one USB hard drive with the backups, and have it all running within less than half a day. That's my goal. The whole company. I mean, the next part that I'm going to do is actually automated installation. I leave it as the last part because it doesn't matter too much right now. And, well, if there are no changes, the playbooks run for something like 15 minutes. No, 9 minutes, if I remember correctly. But if there are changes, if we do it on some testing environment, well, half an hour is a norm. It depends how much changes it does. But really, if you want to automate, if you want to make sure that it will be done in the same way, I think Ansible is the answer. I'm not saying that everything is working correctly because, oh my goodness, I could say that I was saying a lot of words when I was playing with, for example, VMware and Ansible, and unfortunately, I couldn't quote it, or if I would quote it, it would be an empty. So you know what I mean. I was swearing like crazy, but it's better. When I was starting playing with Windows modules, oh my goodness, it was so, it was so not nice, but now it works much better. It doesn't have lots of stuff that I need, so I have to do it from the other ways. One of my first playbooks, for example, was deploying the Gluster cluster. GlusterFS cluster. And, well, I was doing it manually. 2 weeks after I did it, in Ansible, we had Gluster modules. Now, there is even something better. You have something like gdeploy, that you can actually take the really complicated playbook and, well, modify the variables. Here it goes. Ceph Ansible. Peter showed it to you last time, if I do remember correctly. DevOps, if you would like to have Debian in a data center environment, well, get DevOps, you have lots of roles that you can use for free. It's getting better and better. I'm not even talking about Ansible Galaxy because, well, I have mixed feelings. I use it because I take a look at lots of those codes and learn a lot. But on the other hand, whenever I need something and it was available on Ansible Galaxy, most of the time they say, oh my goodness, I can do it better. I'm not saying that I would do better. That's what I thought. And sometimes, yes, I make it more universal, whatever.
And last question.
Sure.
When was your first contact with Ansible 2?
My last contact? My first. 1.5 something, 2 or 3 years ago. Yep. It changed a lot. That's the thing there. I don't have that much experience with any other configuration management systems, so it would be hard to compare. Actually, it was a little bit like an accident. A colleague told me, there is something like that, you could try it. Okay, why that is so cool? Well, it's using SSH. It's using SSH. That's a good idea because actually I have a lot of systems that I wasn't able to manage because installing agents somewhere and connecting, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Now, the first thing is, okay, I can use SSH, which means I can use it whenever I want. Then it doesn't require installing any agent. Oh my goodness. I don't have to go to talk to those management guys and tell them, well, it is great, whatever. Well, I can just do my stuff and that's it. No one knows. Okay, it's in the logs, but actually no one cares about what I'm doing if it works. If I have access, of course. If you don't have access, well. Yeah. If you don't have the access, it means breaking into computer systems. I'm joking a little bit.
How do you say, like, these two will work in like 5 years or so, in the next 5 years? Still ongoing?
Let me put it like this. It is already one of the top tools for doing stuff like this. Its development is going into the very, very right direction. Whenever they fucked up something, they fix it quickly. Probably not so quickly, but they know that it's not so nice, so they have a plan to fix it. It's easy to learn. It doesn't require lots of skills, so in the beginning you can do some very simple stuff and you still get the benefits of it.
They are video tutorials, etc.
Yeah, video tutorials.
Introduction, etc.
The documentation is even better and better. On the beginning, oh my goodness. Now it's much better. There is a community, huge community, but the huge community is only because it's easy to use, it's nice to use, it's not so centralized. So, well, gdeploy is on GitHub somewhere. Ansible is somewhere else on the GitHub. It's not under Ansible umbrella, so it's not getting, I don't know, it has whatever it needs. It's being done by those who use it, not by someone that actually pretends to use it. I think it is the future. It's like with OpenSSH. Everyone is using it. Maybe not everyone knows how powerful it is, but everyone is using. And the same stuff in here. I'm not saying that it is the best one. I don't have something like 200 machines to manage at the same time. So maybe tools like Salt will be better for that. I don't know. From what I read, it's not the best tool to manage 200 machines, but there's not a problem. You can actually specify serial 10%. Do 10% of your machines at the same time only. And well, I told you that costs file is actually something that you specify manually. Well, you don't. You can have a dynamic inventory. Another thing, Ansible is used a lot in the cloud environments. So the cloud modules, well, you have everything in there.
And from previous presentation, manage IQ.
Oh, yeah.
Or in the middleware, yes?
Yep.
I presume it's in the middleware of the manage IQ.
Yep. Actually, things like OpenShift, Ansible. Installing Ceph, well, you can choose different ways, but you are using Ansible anyway. And lots of stuff like this is with Ansible because it's easy. It's very sane. So unless you do something really crazy, it won't kick you in your bed. So that's something really, really nice. Yep. Oh, one more thing that I will show you why I think it's cool. I know that use case can be a little bit strange, but I prepared some group variables that I wanted to show you and forget about it. Not that one, that one. Okay. For the showable group, which means include for all my firewalls, including the management, some variables. Then for the specific group, where we specify mostly VRP and other stuff configuration. And in here we have something like VRP priority. So all hosts in that group will have that priority. Now I did something strange, but it is really well thought. I told you I have 3 firewalls, 2 physical ones. The third one is virtual, because probably when there will be a backup data center, that firewall will be only a virtual machine. So let's practice it now, when we can play with it now on the production. And I would like to make sure that that machine will not be the one that will use production traffic. So we have group variables and we have host variables. In that host variables, this is my name, override something, but I specify VRP priority 5. So basically it means that just for that host, I change 1 parameter. The thing is you can go from very overall to the most specific one. The most specific one wins. That is cool. Unfortunately, I didn't find a way, probably there is, or maybe not, I'm not sure, about adding different variables together. but overriding is very easy. Just like that, I change the priority, so if any of the two physical firewalls will be running, it will be a master. If both of them won't, well, you can put lots of resources into making sure that you separate code from variables. So that's one of the things that you can do. If it makes sense, I'm not sure. Sometimes after half a year, I said, I would do it differently. I can see my old playbooks and said, oh my goodness, how can I do something so ugly? You know, it's like with programming, writing, I don't know, doing whatever you like. When you do it, you learn, you become more advanced. But one thing to keep, which is really essential, I think, and it is even in the official documentation, keep it as simple as you can. There are lots of stuff that I decided not to use because when I take a look at the code, I said, oh my goodness, it's too complicated. And when something is too complicated, if it breaks, it will be too hard for me to fix it. The simpler, the better. Sometimes we have to do it more complicated. I just saw you that crazy template for keep alive, for example. Okay, it's hard. But I need it like this. Because I just modify some variables, run the playbook, and my VRP configuration is fixed, changed, whatever. If you want elasticity, it will go crazy. If you want simplicity, it will be simple but not that elastic. No. No. I did two maybe not so big from the programmer's point of view, but actually in my life I wrote two Perl applications. One was a client-server application, and one was strictly server one. On the client-server, I even wrote the graphical client in Perl. And let me tell you, after half a year, I really find out that Perl is write once language. Maybe if I would do programming in Perl every week, I would really understand what I did. But after half a year, I take a look at my code and I said, oh my, I think it would be easier for me to rewrite it from scratch than trying to understand it. In here, it is completely different. That's why I was showing you all those playbooks. They are actually quite easy to understand. I'm not using too many variables. Of course, if you take a look at DevOps, for example, variable and variable and variable sometimes, yep. But at least there is documentation how to use it. It's really easy to use. It's, well, you just take a look at the idea. One more thing that might be essential from my experience. You know that there is a very good documentation on the web. Let me tell you, don't use it. Why? The thing is that on the web you will find information about something that is not on the production yet. Some options that will appear in the next release and stuff like that. Luckily, we have the thing that we can actually use if we are looking for the modules information. Ansible doc -L, what modules are available, you can grab for it, of course. They are crazy number of modules. Oh my goodness, as you can see. And anyway, in here you can, well, search for what you like. Let's take a look at the apt or whatever. Ansible doc, the name of the module, and you have information. If there is an equal sign, that means that parameter, that option is mandatory, probably somewhere below. You have information, what are the defaults, and it is really a good idea to specify the defaults, believe me, because it's easy to later revert the change. And not only options are available, well, where it is? You have requirements, for example. When you do a very clean minimal install of Debian, it won't work with Ansible. There's one package that you need to install with dependencies, and you have that name, Python apt. That's it. You have examples. You can specify in different ways how you want to use it actually, but those examples are really great. I have to admit, on the beginning I was using the web, but after a few problems with it, like using an option that is not available in the released version, I decided not to go for it anymore. So that's why I'm using the one that I have. Another thing, when there is a new release version, it is a good idea to update to it as soon as you can. Usually you have some backports, or you can just use virtual env, whatever. And believe me, lots of fixes, lots of new modules, sometimes new options. And last week it was with Peter, we have more than 1 week ago. Oh, okay, anyway, there was a thing about, is Ansible capable of extending file system? I mean expanding, growing it. And I say, yes, I was doing it in one of my playbooks. But I take a look at the manual, there was Ansible 1.9. Jesus, it's not there. I have to take a look at my playbook to find out that it is in there. So, yeah, you can be surprised. Oops, not man. It was file system, I think. And I do remember I was playing with that option. Resize FS. Cool. I had it on LVM volume, and I was just changing in variables the size, run it. It's bigger, run it one more time. Okay, nothing changed. Let's change the value, run it one more time. Oh, it's bigger, cool. On the web, probably will find that it is available since Ansible 2.0, to 1, to 2, whatever. 2.0 Ansible, by the way, is really a change-breaking version. Lots of things changed, new options became available. So take the new one that you can, maybe not release candidate, and play with it, really. I personally think that there are 3 great things in IT in the last decade. Virtualization, OpenSSH, and Ansible. I know, it might sound crazy, but I do really love it. Don't worry, you can ask me, as many as you like.
Gdzie nie używasz Ansible?
Gdzie nie używam?
Where do you not use Ansible?
When I'm not using Ansible. That's a really hard question, I have to admit.
In local lab.
I try to use it everywhere. I really try to use it everywhere.
Why?
The place where I'm not using it right now, for example, is switch management. It's because I have cheaper switches which don't have modules for it. But my idea is to, well, when I will get to that point that I will have some free time, I will write a module. It's quite easy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of actually cool network equipment. Unfortunately, well, the better, the nicer, the more expensive. So it's a little bit harder to play with it because usually it's on the production, and playing on the production is not a good idea usually. So, yep, that's why I started playing with those Ubiquiti stuff and decided, oh my goodness, they are so really cool, so powerful. Let's use it on the production. Yep. Oh yeah, I have to admit I bought one for home. I'm amazed. It's extremely cheap. It's totally quiet because I bought 24 ports version without any fans. When I take a look at the menu, I say, oh my goodness, it has almost everything that I need, and probably most of those, 99% of those features is something that I will never use. So yeah, I have to admit, I never thought that there could be something like this, but yet I do really love it. And well, my idea is, for example, to, instead of going with separate physical cards into the physical firewalls, because you have problems with expanding. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 physical connection from the outside world. So if you want to have it, if you compare at switches and other stuff, well, you might have problem to put so many network cards into the one physical machine. I think it's better to, for example, put 2 switches in front and do everything in there on the VLANs. But what you have to do is to make sure that, for example, it's not leaking VLANs and stuff like that. Just test it carefully for a month or something like that before going into production with it. And well, if you have cheaper equipment, you can actually have a spare. If you have a spare, you can take it to experiment, to play with it. And well, believe it or not, I do love open source, probably because I can use it. I was working in a couple of different companies. Usually the problem is you can do something cool, but you need someone to actually sign the check for it. And it takes at least a couple of months. And you would like to do something right now because actually it's kicking you in your butt and you would like to fix the problem, to be able to sleep at night easily. You take open source, you go for it, you do it. Well, if you go for something that costs money, well, it depends. If you have the money, that's cool. That's usually the even better solution. If you don't, you have problems. Yep. Another thing is, well, if something is open source, you can play with it. You can test it. You can actually break it, repair it, learn how it works. If you have just one device and it is on the production environment, you basically don't touch it. Because if you touch it, it might break. The problem is, okay, what if it breaks? You can buy a new one. Yeah, if it's expensive, it will take you a week before they will get you a new one. I really saw lots of strange things like, let's go with very expensive equipment because it's so cool. But the problem is, well, what about availability? Yes, you can buy the second one. Yeah, but it's so expensive. Have anyone ever buy the second one? No. Okay, so if no one buy a second one to make a cluster, why you are actually doing a cluster? Because someone can. Okay, but no one bought it. And because no one bought it, actually they are paying twice or 3 times the same price for doing something in a different technology. You can talk like this however long. I even saw solutions that I was so surprised. Okay, we have 2 firewalls. Wow, cool. Show me how it works on the paper. After looking at this, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Please tell me because I cannot understand. Is it possible that one firewall is doing just one thing and another one is doing something separate and they don't work in highly available mode? Oh, yes. Oh my goodness, why you have 2? It happens all the time. So that's why I prefer solution that I can use. One thing that I haven't told you about is something that is even better. If you are in a corporate environment, you need something, okay, you do the playbook, but he can implement it. But you can implement it only on some parts of the machine. You can implement another part of the machines. For that, you have Ansible Tower, which is built on top of Ansible. It's another thing, something that you can use in the enterprises. In here, well, one-man show, we can say. You can do it like this. Okay, you can actually cooperate with someone else, but it's up to you. There are no mechanisms to protect you from doing something bad. Yep, something like that. Yep. Exactly. You are controlling everything. If you, yep, like in the old good times.
You use the tags, and
Yep.
you have got a browser of the tags to search or grip.
Okay, there are no browser, but let me show you why I use tags. Let me try to actually run one thing. Ansible Playbook, so I can run a playbook, production YAML. I will use this one, which means show the changes, don't do the changes, show the changes, and show the differences in files. Now I can specify limit to specific host groups. let's say Windows, and use the tag, or I don't know, whatever. So I can limit where it is going to be run and which tasks. Probably in here it wouldn't make any sense, but I have to admit I use it a lot when I develop. I'm trying to develop a new role, so I don't have to wait, let's say, 5 minutes for all of this to run. But after that, I'm trying to connect it all together. Sometimes it's important because it has to be run in specific order, whatever. And at the end, what you see in here, okay, we have task, okay, okay, okay. That one are skipped. And actually, we finished here. Normally, in a production environment, it would run for at least 9 minutes.
Next questions.
Yes?
I don't know that you know about Cloud Init, is the software.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, to VPNs, etc. software. Ansible can create files, configure it with
Yep.
the parameters via your vars, etc. and runs, of course, services that I know. That it's similar software to me, but this one is, of course, more to run remotely playbooks.
Well, Cloud Init is actually to make sure that we don't have any, what is this, the English word? Tożsamość. Identity, that we don't have any identity on the machine. With Ansible, you are making sure that at the end of the playbook, it is doing what you want. That's the biggest difference. But yes, if you want, actually I was playing a little bit in one of my roles to do things like, okay, I have cloned the machine, let's remove the SSH key, change the host name and stuff like that. It's all doable, but I'm not sure if it makes sense. Maybe it's better to use tools like Cloud Init, whatever.
Simple to
Yep,
just one customer.
yep. Okay, we have Chocolate, or however it's called, so you can take software from a huge repository. I have to admit I don't use it because my Windows machine are not accessing the internet unless for the Windows updates. So I don't use it. In my case, I simply take the MSA file, if it's available, or exe file, and find out how to run it in unattended installation. And what I'm doing is actually copying it on the machine, run it, configure it, do whatever I need manually. It's not the best way, but, well, it works. And at least I'm sure that it's repeatable. Oh yeah, if you have Active Directory, go for it. It's much better if you have that environment. There are lots of places where, for many reasons, as you said, you don't have Active Directory. I'm not going to dive into the details why. If you have Active Directory, well, use Active Directory. I think there are some modules for Ansible, or if not, you can actually use your PowerShell scripts and push them through Ansible if you like. It's up to you. If you don't, you have the basic way to actually manage those machines, which are usually in some disconnected places and stuff like that. I have a playbook that actually, for example, allows specify, okay, use that proxy for accessing Windows updates. The proxy is configured automatically. At least I know that we have some updates to install. I'm not trusting on automatic installing of Windows updates, but that's another story. It works. Okay, another questions? Because I guess it's a little bit late. Sure. Here you are.
Thank you very much. Maybe this won't be a question because one of the guys has had a question where not to use an Ansible, and I had two edge cases when Ansible was not good for
Okay.
was not a good solution. One was when in Ansible inventory, the hosts depends on some facts defined on different hosts, and
Okay.
Ansible works in kind of imperative way. So all the flow is the step by step defined, and sometimes when we have, for example, some value defined on one host, the Ansible playbook is run inside the context of one host, so we can't we can, but it's not comfortable, for example, to check or to get some facts from one host and use these facts on other hosts. And other edge case is if we want to define our infrastructure on AWS, for example, when we have environment, when we have where we have many VPC and firewall rules and AC2 machines depends on VPC. So, for example, in my case, that HashiCorp Terraform was better solution. But I don't want to say that Ansible is a bad, because I love Ansible and I am using Ansible in many solutions. But in that kind of two cases, I think Ansible is not the best option to do. Yeah.
Terraform is going a little bit wider than just Ansible. That's one of the reasons. I'm not saying that Ansible is perfect. For example, I told you about the serial updates. You can define it, but only on per playbook level, not per task. So you have to plan actually how you implement in the playbook, how to actually run it. So if you work with it, you will find that it has some limitations, of course. Nothing is perfect. It's quite a new project still, but it's quite powerful. Really. And simple.
I do not use this product, that's why I'm asking.
Please try. If you will have any question, feel free to send me an email. I will do my best to try to answer it.
Thank you very much. So you're right now a single point of contact in Poland in this area.
Wow. Okay. So, any other questions? Thank you.